we had the benefit of leveraging the resources that WorldFish brought from, granting institutions. And so the project has quite a longer list of individuals. Not everyone has been acknowledged here, but I want to especially acknowledge Rohana, Dr. Rohana Subesinghe, who was a key player on this particular project, and Dr. Suri Wadena, who is the country director in Nigeria, who mainly spearheaded much of this, and a few other people who made this possible. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the goal of the project is to conduct a comprehensive analysis of aquaculture post-harvest value chain. There were three specific objectives for this particular project. The first is we wanted to identify technologies and practices that the farmers were using. And our interest is to identify those things that are more likely to contribute to income growth, improvement in diets, and a reduction in post-harvest losses. That is the first one. The second, we wanted to map the linkages that exist among the actors in the aquaculture value chain, and also to assess the productivity and the profitability of aquaculture in Nigeria. And the last one is to identify the existing gaps, cultural, gendered, and other related issues that may prevent or hamper the development of the sector. And so I will go straight, and before then, let me mention this. The next slide, please. Sorry. So we acknowledge the role that institutions like Gates Foundation played in this. Our partners, WorldFish, received generous funding, and we were able to leverage on that. But for that, our research would have been restricted and limited to perhaps just a couple states. But with this, we were able to collect data from 8 states in Nigeria and interview several individuals. And these 8 states represented the agroecological zones in Nigeria. So we can fairly say that our data and our research is a representation of the larger Nigerian population. Next slide, please. This is a picture of Nigeria. It's a huge country, the largest economy in Africa, with more than 200 million people. It has 6 agroecological zones, and these have their distinct geopolitical, even cultural and environmental issues. And so by identifying, states in each of these zones and collecting data on that, we can reasonably say we endeavor to represent the wider Nigerian population. Next slide, please. So this is the first interest of this research, the systems, the technologies that are being used. And basically from a pre-survey, we identified the technologies that are being used in aquaculture system, and then identify their usage. And we find that earthen ponds is the most popular, and we will see that in the next couple of slides that it also provides the most profitable use. About 58% of the respondents reported using it, followed by concrete tanks, and then tarpaulin tanks, fiber plastic tanks, And the others reported just insignificant usage. And so our subsequent analysis will focus on, these technologies that are being used. The next slide, please. So for us to understand the characteristics of aquaculture production system in Nigeria, we focus on two things. First, we mapped aquaculture value chain, and then we performed cost-benefit analysis of tilapia as well as catfish. Next series of slides will show some of these mappings. The next slide, please. So this is the aquaculture value chain in Nigeria. And the takeaway in Lagos, in the state of Lagos, the takeaway for this is, well, as Humphrey mentioned in his presentation, it's not linear. The relationships, it's a network of actors. But more importantly, we learned that the value chain tend to be short. In other words, there are fewer intermediaries between the producer and the markets. So it doesn't take a long, it doesn't go through a series of chains before the product ends up in the market. And we'll comment on that in a minute. The next slide, please. This is the catfish value chain in Ogun. And it's similar, it's also fairly short, but it connects the different actors together. Even though we mapped, value chain for catfish and tilapia in the 8 states that we investigated, for the purposes of time, I'm presenting only these 2, but we see similar features among all the value chains we mapped, that they are short, that the link between producers to the market is short, and that it is not linear. They are well connected. And so basically that is about the value chain. Now let's focus on the benefit cost analysis in the next slide. And here I'm only going to show you the profitability of catfish aquaculture. We did for tilapia, the results are similar, except that the benefit cost ratio for catfish tend to be a little better. As you will see, for the whole sample, we reported 1.64, which suggests for every dollar investment, you expect a return of $1.64 or Naira. However, when we isolated that of earthen pond, you see the 1.75 is, of course, much higher than 1.64. So earthen ponds, or the use of earthen ponds as the technology in catfish production is perceived, in fact, is empirically found to be more profitable. Concrete tank, which is the second most used in Nigeria, reported slightly lower. It's about 1.62. Then we lump all the other production facilities together that reported just a small usage. We found 1.56. So it doesn't really matter what technology they are using, it's profitable. But earthen ponds tend to be most profitable among the different technologies in use. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the third question of interest, the impact of aquaculture in Nigeria. This is more subjective question. It's about perception, where we ask respondents what influenced their decision to go into aquaculture. The last 2 are really revealing. So the most common answer is that, well, other farmers have reported successes and they have perceived that it is profitable. And that is important. And you see about 50, more than 50% of respondents identify that. And then there is also the perception that there is a high market demand. And so they are going into aquaculture to meet that demand, to fill a specific need. So this slide helps us to appreciate that there is uh, an interest in aquaculture. There is a perception that it has promise in Nigeria. The next slide basically is a little more objectively determined, where we're asking them, so what is the percentage of your income that come from your activity in aquaculture production? And of course, my legend is a little not so uh, clear, but basically when you sum this together, more than 75% reported that they receive more than half of their income from aquaculture production. This is why that is really significant and important. There is the perception in Nigeria, and of course in sub-Saharan Africa, that uh, aquaculture production is just for retirees, those who retire. It's just a pastime. And so people really don't look to it as a source of income. But in this particular case, those that are involved in this are reporting that they are earning more than 50% of their income from aquaculture. That is important. And that helps us to appreciate that an intervention in this can be a means of addressing the economic challenges that people face in this country. The next slide, please. So in this slide, we talk about the role of aquaculture in women empowerment, youth engagement. Generally, aquaculture in Nigeria is gendered. Males tend to be found more in the production and processing end of things, whereas females are more active in trading, wholesaling, and retailing activities. And this is not surprising. This is expected. It's part of the culture and strong perception about some of this. But another interesting observation is that of the 486 respondents that we used in this survey, the average age was 45. That is a good number. It suggests that you don't have, because the retiring age is 60. And so if you have 45, it suggests that not too many people are retired in this particular endeavor. But this statistic is of interest to us. There were 25% of the farm owners in the study sample who were less than 36 years old. And our interest is to target younger people to take up a career in this and contribute to, aquaculture development. Next slide, please. And so this slide summarizes some of the challenges females basically report from our focus group discussion. There are cultural restrictions, and as we observe, females tend to be at the end of the chain, marketing, retailing, whereas males tend to do most of the production. And some of the issues we identified that preclude women's involvement has to do with lack of capital and difficulty of women accessing financial resources. Uh, Generally, collateral is an important one. Land as a collateral is usually not readily available to women. Men tend to control such resources. Females tend to be risk averse. The infrastructure in Nigeria may not be mostly conducive to women. And sometimes, and in many cases, extension services may target males rather than females. And so these are some of the issues, challenges that females play that may preclude their involvement in this. Next slide, please. Now, I guess this is our last slide. So here are some of the concluding comments. There is limited access to cold chain facilities in Nigeria. This is a fact we have recognized, but that gets to explain why we have shorter value chains. Why? Because they need to get products to the market before they spoil. And so we estimated that the average fish transport time is between 1 and 2 hours, which is a way to respond to a challenge you are facing. You don't have systems in place to process, system in place, cold chain are not readily available. So that is something of interest to us. But then we learned something really interesting from our data, that contrary to the expectation that we're going to report a high post-harvest loss, this is not as pronounced as we assumed. And some have suggested it's probably because most of the losses are pre-harvest, and we were focusing on post-harvest. And of course, the last comment is that although both species, we focus on tilapia and catfish, report low post-harvest losses, catfish is considered hardier, and it tended to report lower post-harvest loss. And from our analysis, catfish is also considered mostly more profitable. And that is it. And I want to seize the opportunity to thank you all for especially USAID and for the management entity for the opportunity given us to work on this particular project. And we look forward to continuing this in our ongoing project, where we hope to integrate some of the lessons learned from this particular project to improve aquaculture in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julius. Okay, so as the next team prepares, is there a comment or question? Again, we are a little pressed for time, but and I want to thank also World Fish and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for this. This really was a larger part of a larger project, but it was very much a cooperation between the Bill and Melinda Gates funded project and the Fish Innovation Lab supported project on the post-harvest chain.
I don't want to take any time. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sometimes my headset acts up. I don't want to take any time from the advisory board if anybody has a question for Julius and his team, but I was wondering, how did you guys measure post-harvest loss? Because we're actually trying to do that with this next study. And we found the tool was a very well used tool that's from 2000 is actually not great, and so we're actually adapting it. So we're really curious about how you guys did that. So we'd love to talk some more.
Well, thank you for that question. I wish Noor is here. He was online a few minutes ago. I will endeavor to. I will attempt, and of course, the others in the team, if they would like to chip in, we will appreciate that. Basically, we had series of questions about that measured how series of questions that track from harvesting all the way to the market. And so what was the total sample at this point? How much was available at this point? And so with that, we were able to do that. We use an econometric model to do that. And of course, the models produce quite similar. We had several models to estimate that loss, and the models all produce different numbers, but all of them were within a range of 0.5 to 1. So that is why we used 1 as the maximum possible loss that we reported. So just to recap, so at the point of harvesting, we identified the number, and then from farm gate, and so we identify all the steps that the fish travel, through till it gets to the market. And so we quantify the aquaculture product at each stage. And with that, we're able to come up with what the total loss is. That is, to put it more simply. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. Okay, and so please continue to put your questions